and 3.5 and 2 are not here.
And my oldest one turns 20 soon. I feel your pain.
I'm Diane Weinstein. I'm the art editor at Space and Time magazine and worked for years at Weird Tales as an assistant editor. And I've worked in other small press venues over the years doing a whole bunch of jack of all trades things, but never. Okay, go ahead.
I am Jennifer Pelland, a lapsed writer turned belly dancer. I have been active in fandom for, I'm not kidding, I showed pictures. I've been active in fandom, and I used to do like tons of fanfic stuff when I was younger, and
Now I remember her.
yeah. And I actually quibble with the Parental Undertones of Fannishness. I think it's more like being an aunt or an uncle, because someone else made it, and you can go home at the end of the day and like forgot to change its stinky diapers, but you get to have fun with it and engage with it and try to make it better and more interesting, which I do with my niece and nephew all the time. And then go home. It's not yours. You don't own it. So I think Fannishness is more like being an aunt or an uncle rather than being a parent.
You're probably right, because I had trouble with the title of this, because this is not the way. I think the meat of it here is what leads fans to take on a parental role. And now this, that's one, with the works they love. Does anybody want to discuss that?
Say that again?
What leads fans to take on this parental role with the works they love? It's the spur.
I also don't think it's very parental. I think if it's parental, it's bad parenting. Because you're remaking something. You're taking something and saying, and part of being a parent is letting go and letting them, just as editing is letting something be more like themselves. Being a parent is letting them be more like themselves.
Okay, I thought I was going to be the only one.
Yeah, no.
Okay, anybody else want to chime in on that one?
Well, I mean, there are some analogies, but it is definitely kind of a strained analogy. I mean, the things you can do to help kids be their best selves, you know, there are things you can do, but they're not really things I think that are really applicable to the fandom. Like, you can set up an environment that nurtures them. You can give them structure. You can, you know, say, okay, you like this thing, let's explore that. You know, those are not really, you can't force feed the creators of your favorite book or show. You can't say, you really, here, let's read this at bedtime. You should read this. So, I mean, those are ways that you can influence and nurture people that aren't really the same as works made by other people. But there is kind of this, I would like to see you be your best self, which I think that's, you know, there's something there, but it's a lot easier and less guilt-ridden to put fandom of your family.
Well, again, this is the second part of this was appropriate, respectful, or oh God, I'm tongue-tied. Literally paternalistic. I think it is paternalistic, but I don't think that it's always. I personally look at fanfic as a starting point. I know it's a thing unto itself, but I believe if you're writing, you should put your work out there in a different way, like getting money for it.
I don't know. I know people.
But I know people don't. That's just
yeah. I mean, I don't write at all, but I know people who don't want. Well, I know people who just started like in the self-publishing, especially this fairly new model of self-publishing short erotica, which is actually can be very profitable. So I know some people who you know don't want to be traditionally published, but started doing that. But
is it ironic that it's short erotica? Because, you know, size does matter.
Well, this is a tangent, but because it seems like the topic might not take up the time, we will of course talk to you all about what you would like to talk about this topic. But I was stunned. I have a couple of friends who are making. I know somebody who put herself through an advanced degree, and because what I think of as a fair price for an ebook. Like people would pay $3 for like not even a novella that's marketed to their specific things. So she said, you know, don't look at it as 80 pages.
Oh, I was just thinking of something. Go ahead.
Okay, you know, think of it as this is $3 not for 80 pages. This is $3 for an orgasm. Okay. So anyway, what I was getting to before I got off track, and I apologize, is that, you know, people who are writing fanfic sometimes, you know, until fairly recently, traditional, you know, publishing is kind of a pain in the ass. And if you have anxiety issues, or if you just don't want to go through all of that, and you want, because, you know, there's immediate feedback, you know, there's a lot more community engagement. Anyway, but I was talking to Jennifer about this way in. Another thing, but like, I don't know what the analogy is for transformative works in your family, but I don't think it can be good. I don't.
Well, I'm going for the aunt-uncle thing. That's why, like, a friend of mine's brother went to my friend and said, "My son's old enough to see an R-rated movie, but I'm uncomfortable bringing him. You're his uncle, take him." I said, "Okay." And I think that is the role of the aunt and the uncle. If you're talking about transformative works, it's the whole, okay, I know normally you do soccer practice on Saturdays, but I'm with you this weekend and we're going to Steampunk Festival. Okay? And you're going to glue some gears on those glasses of yours and we're going to have a fun time. And I'm going to show you a whole new world that you're not exposed to, and then you go back to, you know, being a soccer kid on weekends when you're done with me.
Well, I'm going to do something that's going to embarrass my husband. I lied. I now remember doing fanfic. But it wasn't science fiction. It was the Happy Hooker. I thought it was a scream. I used to read her books, and I thought it was just really, really bizarre. So I did my own little short stories.
I have no idea what you're talking about. What you can
Happy Hooker?
The Happy Hooker.
Oh, you know.
Well, anyway, I'll explain this later. Anyway, she was somebody that was proud of being a hooker, and she's claimed to have slept with thousands of men, and she was on TV, and she wrote these books that made lots and lots of money. And I was sitting in an office, bored out of my skull, and I wrote a version of it, but that wasn't the Happy Hooker. I was calling something like The Hooker Does Washington, D.C. And my hooker went up and down the Washington Monument, literally, you know, on every level. And my friends were incredibly, it was sort of PG though, not PG, I would say an R rather than not direct.
See,
you know.
if only this were today, you could have been the next.
Xavier Hollander.
Yes, Xavier Hollander, that's right, that's right.
And I stole my sister's copy.
But anyway, that's two confessions. I wasn't going to do that. I just completely went out of my head. It was sort of me making fun of it, and we were all bored. You know, seriously. I think that's what happens a lot of times with fanfic. Maybe you were sitting there and you just, you know, you just wanted to have a little fun, right?
No, sometimes actually it's because you see something and you go, like I know in the 80s there was a huge also explosion of slash fic at that point because you were not seeing it on TV.
Yes.
They would
Yeah.
Roseanne was more progressive than Star Trek, and that was wrong. When Roseanne and The Simpsons both had same-sex relationships and Star Trek wouldn't.
That's true.
Fanfic actually stepped in to say, we're going to fix this. Fanfic stepped in to say, why are there no Jews on Star Trek? Fanfic stepped in to answer, to go, there are these huge glaring holes, and we are going to go, I almost made a sex reference. Glaring holes in this future, and we are going to go and catch them. And so, catch, that's not a plug, I said plug, I said catch. So actually a lot of it is actually driven by a weird progressivism. But also there's the whole Mary Sue thing, which is not a bad thing in your head, please write it down. But you know, the whole, I want to put myself in there, and that's actually a very strong thing that people want to do. And again, I don't see how this has anything to do with parentalism, but
no, that's an aside. When I was a kid reading things, I read Ted Sturgeon to find out that there was such a thing as gay people. He actually dealt with those issues, and this was written in the 50s, and I went, oh, okay, you know, so what? But anyway, but they were hiding it from us.
Sometimes they did in mysteries too.
Yeah, they were always more progressive than the movies, and they were always ahead. A decade or more than what you see on the screen.
Dorothy Sayers novels have a couple of lesbian couples that were dealt with very delicately. In the first reading, when I was young, I didn't pick up on it, but the second reading, I got you.
Yeah, well, that's really not the topic, but that's okay. Go ahead.
Well, you said what does it have to do with parentalism? Well, I mean, partially with control, right? I mean, you're sort of trying to shape and mold whatever it is you care about into what you think it should be. So it's a kind of a act of shepherding, I guess.
changing it.
Yeah.
You're not actually changing it, it stays the same.
Right.
So you're creating your own little thing, and maybe it's the creative process of parenting your own little
Right. But
transformative work or whatever it is you're doing, but you know that whatever you're doing isn't touching the main body.
Right, but the changes in fandom and closeness to creators these days, it's not anywhere near the same as parent-child relationship, but you have things like the I don't remember what the hashtag is, but like Twitter campaigns and campaigns to diversify Agent Carter, the TV show, and you get Hayley Atwell, who plays Peggy Carter, tweeting things like, diversity came up in the writers' room, I didn't even mention it. So you can even beyond fanfic, you know, and the internet has allowed a greater access, and which isn't necessarily, it's not necessarily going to happen, but it allows for more raising of these things in the same way that I looked at the books my kid took out from her school library from summer, and 6 of them had, you know, a boy hero when a girl sacrifice gets rescued, and then the other 8 had like no inside. I'm like, okay, there is no, let us find something else here because we need some girl adventure heroes up in here. So
yeah, well, my mother didn't understand that I was reading some pretty subversive stuff because it was in the children's section because the local librarian thought all science fiction and fantasy was for kids. So I read it because this was the only dialogue that I had where they were dealing with real life issues. There was, even if I was 10, this was the mirror on what I was going to have to cope with, and I appreciated it.
I read Horace Nelson at 11. Nowadays you get arrested if you let your kid do that.
I know that.
my parents had no idea. I read Hyperion. Okay, I went to I read Hyperion when I was 12. They had no idea what was in it. I mean, they knew it was presumed innocent, and there was dead silence on the table when I mentioned I read that. But they had no idea what was in it.
It worked me too much.
No, but well, that's another topic. Did you?
Go ahead.
Yeah, well, when I was thinking about parental overtones of fannishness, being a fan and being in fandom and running different groups and such, what I've seen is that people are very protective of their fandoms, and that if anybody says anything that maybe even remotely questions the validity of the fandom or anything about it, people will jump all over that in a rabid effort to protect it.
That's exactly why I was nervous about this panel, because I don't want to step on toes. Everybody has a right to their own fandom.
Exactly, exactly.
They really do. What my opinions are, it's just my opinions. It does nothing to do
But
with
that's a very parental opinion, because, you know, anyone badmouths my children, I'm on that.
But because it's coming from outside.
Yeah.
Because I can say things
Exactly.
in a loving, joking way.
Right,
and
people
somebody
within
else
fandom,
say-
the fandom can say
right.
something about if anybody
Okay.
else does.
All right, okay,
Exactly.
go ahead.
I wanted to continue on that topic and say that sometimes that comes up as a backlash to fan fiction and fanish interpretations and headcanons. For example, I've seen in fandoms where the canon is geared very much towards straight males. Sometimes there's a huge backlash against slash fan fiction because a lot, and it's, you know, it's probably, I mean, it's obviously rooted in homophobia to a point, but it's also kind of just, I have this view of the character, like maybe I identify with the character, don't change them.
Oh, I got some nasty
there's-
emails from people that did not like the fact that I wrote slash about some of the beloved characters. And you know, fuck them.
I mean, like,
You don't have to read it.
You don't have to read it, which I didn't do.
some of the stuff the slash
But that's
canon
okay.
writes itself,
Yes.
but
Yeah.
you know, a certain reader,
Sometimes you go, how are you not seeing
refuses
it?
to see it.
Yeah.
I personally don't read fanfic, which is fic.
I don't anymore, so it's okay.
But then again, you have to excuse me because I read for years and years the Slush Pile and a pretty good name, Weird Tales. I read thousands and thousands and thousands of short stories. So I didn't do as much reading outside the office because you understand, when you go home, you don't,
Yeah.
you know,
I actually
do
find
that.
I
I have a
find
giant list of things to
To read, I would go home and read Edgar Allan Poe's to remember how it's supposed to be. I did this.
I
Howard.
Yes.
I have a really hit or miss with original short fiction just because I find that it's hard work doing the original world building and the character building in that short, I actually find that fanfic works really well for me at shorter lengths because you have that already
Yes.
there.
Yep.
And so when I don't have brain or time for a novel, because I have such a hit or miss on short fiction, I read a ton of short fanfic.
Yeah, I've never done that, but I can tell you one thing, having been an editor and talked to incredible amounts of writers, briefly perhaps, one of the questions I asked them is, did you write pastiches when you started out? Was there somebody that you so admired that you copied their style inadvertently? And it almost all of them will say yes.
Oh, yeah.
So that sometimes it is a pathway to some people to go into the field and write their own stories. They want to improve on it.
But you're a professional fanfic writer if you're writing novelization, if you're writing game fiction.
If you're then.
There's a tremendous amount of game novels, which I had no idea.
Or you can,
Last year I edited an anthology of short stories, of books, of stories set in the world of Sookie Stackhouse along with Charlene Harris, who did the True Blood books. And these were all stories written by other people set in her world, and I was editing them both, is it a good story, and does it match the world, and does it not contradict anything?
yeah, but I mean, sorry, it will come back to me.
Okay, go ahead.
Oh, I wanted to say, I think in that sense, fan fiction can be kind of a double-edged sword. Like me, for example, I'm a very picky reader, and sometimes I read a lot more fan fiction than books for the reason that Kate said, that even longer fan fiction takes a lot less of a commitment than most good books. So I'm very picky, and I notice on the one hand, it's easier because you have the characterization, you have the world building already done, you have the interesting qualities of these characters that you don't have to come up with yourself. But on the other hand, it's a challenge because you have to stay true to the canon, which you don't have to worry about when you're writing. When you're writing original work, you create the canon. So I mean, you do have to stay consistent.
It's really hard to keep track of your canon after 20 books, I've been told.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And there's plenty of silly fanfic out there where you just take everything and turn it on its head,
Yeah.
which is
I mean,
ridiculous amounts of fun. But
usually
if you're writing the serious stuff, yeah, you have to try.
Yeah, usually it tells you that this is going to be silly. It's
Yeah.
it's intended. You're not intended to take it seriously.
To drag this slightly back in the direction of parents and family. I mean, one of the things I have had to grit my teeth about is it will not kill the kids if we read a dozen East West books or some other terrible chapter books. I read a lot of crap. I still, I've decided I'm not going to apologize for the months when all I do is read fanfic, because that is what my brain needs to get me through the month, and that is fine. And and I'm not going to apologize for that. And similarly, terribly edited adventure novels with derivative mythology and sentence fragments all over the place. It will make me grit my teeth as I read them to her, but she loves it, so okay, whatever. Some things you just have to, the idea of, everything must be all merit all the time.
Well, the older I get, the less I want to read that kind of stuff, but I do occasionally watch what I call, my husband has a fit, I watch the Hallmark channel.
Yes, you okay.
Why? Because I'm sitting there and I can sit there and it's so familiar. It's just like I don't know. I think that maybe what you're talking about is sometimes when you're writing in these universes, it's comfortable. It's you know what's going to happen. You have a good idea where this is going.
Are you talking about in reading it or?
And reading it, or I'm reading it or writing it. Even if
writing
I'm
it, I
writing
found it very tricky.
and it might be comforting in a sort of way, that continuity. So when I'm watching this Hallmark, I know exactly when they're going to have the first kiss, when they're going to have the quarrel. I can watch them in about 15 minutes. They're going to do this, and at the end, they're going to make up, and they're going to do it publicly, and they're going to have this huge kissing scene, and everybody claps behind them because there's a whole audience of people watching them.
That's kind of how I feel about all the Sharknado films I keep watching. I can't wait for Sharknado 3. I mean, it's got to be no Grumpy Cat's Worst Christmas ever, but...
Yeah, but it is sort of like a parental thing. You actually want it like that for a reason. I mean, there's some kind of emotional need it's fulfilling, and maybe that's mine when I don't want to be I don't want to do anything too
A lot of the
brilliant.
category, what they call category romances tend to be formulaic, but if you can get
Yeah.
something good and original and still fit that formula, I think.
Oh, yeah, I actually appreciate when it's a better film, yeah.
I'm just wondering, going back to your aunt's analogy.
Yeah.
So is there a limit to what's fanfic and what's basically, so like if you're an aunt and you take a kid out, let's say the kid has asthma, you're not gonna, or the kid is allergic to something, the kid's allergic to peanuts, you're not gonna give them like peanuts, right? You just can't, there's something
Not like
certain
you
what
like
you
it,
do. Same with, you know, with a book, like if you write, I don't write fanfic, but I know people who do, so are there certain parameters beyond which you're basically not writing fanfic, but you're sort of doing a variation on a theme? Do you know what I mean? I mean, is there certainly where, like, if you're writing, I don't know, Harry Potter fanfic, and you get beyond a certain point, it's really no longer about Harry Potter, but it's about something else?
That happens all the time in a lot of fanfic universes. People, especially when you start getting, I mean, like, I haven't, like I said, I haven't read it in a while, but back when I was heavily involved in the 90s, a lot of sort of shared universes that people would create would sort of take on a life of their own and sort of become their own thing. And, you know, frankly, let's just look at 50 Shades of Grey, which was Twilight fanfic. It is Twilight fanfic that they changed the serial numbers on. She actually made something weirdly of her own. God help us all.
I never read it.
No, I didn't either. I've heard enough about it to know that if I want good porn, I'm going to get it from Surflit. So, but I think it can happen. I think especially when people write, it's, you know, like, especially the long series, that was at least in my experience, is if you write something long enough, it does kind of become your own. I know it has to do with the kid having peanut allergies, but hey, you know, but I mean, the aunt, if you're going to do like the auntly analogy, I think if you actually care about something, you're going to have fun with it, but at the same time, you're probably not going to want to destroy it. I think at that point, if you're out to destroy it, you're not a fan, you're a troll.
I mean, there's not, I mean, I don't think you can destroy something.
No, you can't, but you can destroy it for other people in a sort of sick way.
That's why when people
No,
see.
they
So you have, like, in the context of that story.
Or in the context of the fandom that you're a part of. You know, I have seen people actually, again, this is in the 90s, writing fiction basically just to rub things in the face of other people. And that's when you're a troll. That's trolling via fandom.
Yeah, I thought you were talking more about harshing somebody's spree, basically, about pointing out that, in fact, this is terrible. Or like, in fact, you know, you were all war criminals. Here I'm going to write the AU that, in which they're all war criminals, which is actually not that different from the actual work itself. So I thought you were talking more about that. But if that's the case, then well,
Does it really do any permanent damage?
No, I know a couple of people have had things made into movies, and people say, well, that movie was so bad. Sarah Paretsky novels were made into a movie that was just a dreadful movie. It had nothing to do with the book. And people are like, well, does it feel like you've ruined the book? She goes, oh no, the books are still there.
Stephen Gould had this great T-shirt he wore at some point when Jumper was out and said, "Don't judge a book by its movie." And apparently there's some advice from Isaac Asimov that he found somewhere that said, when I go to the premiere of a movie they made based on something of mine, I sit, I smile, I think of the check. I smile some more.
I remember that, yes,
Yeah, so.
yes. The best, that's very good advice, actually.
And book sales actually spiked because the movie's terrible.
Yeah.
Like, Jumper sold so much more than it had in years when that movie came out, even though it had barely anything to do
Well,
with
they
it.
did that one short season of the Dresden Files, and Jim Butcher's sales tripled. I was
Okay, but she hasn't.
I'm struggling to find an example, but I know there's a, and I don't actually read a whole lot of fanfic. There have been things that the fanfic changes the canon enough that when I go back and read the next book in whatever the series is, I think, wait, no, that didn't happen. That happened this other way. It's like,
or I read a 20K story, I'm like, and then I go read the novel, I'm like, that is the book, this book had so much less character development in it than this story, and I'm sad because I wanted the book to be better than,
I've experienced that.
Yeah.
I think it's my nature. I feel as an editor that I'm mothering people. I really do.
No, I think it was more as coaching when I was editing.
Or coaching. Well,
Coaching's a
I have a motherly disposition, I guess.
Yeah, I guess I occasionally beta fic or things with people, and I sort of, it's sort of half cheerleading and half sort of
Holding hands, holding them, patting them on the back, telling them it's okay.
And
A lot of
poking, like, is this what you
poking
meant?
is really what you want to do.
Yeah.
A lot of what I do is just being, maybe it's a cheerleader, sort of, too, I don't know, because a lot of it has to get people to
You always do
live
your
up to the
kiss-kick
potential.
ratio when you're editing.
Huh?
You know the kiss-kick ratio?
No.
You know, it isn't business phrase, where when you're ever giving feedback of any sort, you always start with a positive. You generally try to have 2 or 3 positives, and it may be nothing other than your stomach's really good. Before you get into that. Or otherwise, it's not sucking up to them, it's not being a whim, it's making it so people can hear it. And if your
That's
goal is to
right.
make the work better, you pay attention to that.
I do. I've also been in a writer's work. I was in a writer's workshop. How many years ago? 25 at least. That's how I got the job editing, guys. I was in a writer's workshop. I was running around with my husband only. I showed up because he writes. And I guess they liked what I had to say. But I always wanted people to succeed. I look at it as what I do is enabling somebody to get some sort of recognition. But, you know, I have pretty high standards, but I still want people to succeed. If I see somebody that's almost there, I might take them aside and tell them exactly what I think was wrong, but try to do it in a kind way. I mean, they can take, and I always tell them you can take my advice or not, it's just one opinion. But I don't ever try to change their story. That's one of the things I don't do.
So I don't know if this is a tangent, but I don't read fanfic and probably won't. But you know, I think I stay somewhat plugged into how fans interact with really popular works. And one of the seminal ones is Doctor Who that's referenced in the panel description. And I think there's a lot of, to me, there's a lot of paternal aspects to the way that people interact with those works, not through writing, but through the conversation that occurs around these works. And to me, these seem like related things. That they, you know, not only by creating their own works, but by just talking about the original works and talking about their ongoing production, they want to guide the future of these works. And
at the same time, Doctor Who has the same relationship back to the fans.
There's actually feedback,
Peter Capaldi goes to the Doctor Who experience and will stand behind the counter serving food and interacting with him. He will like show up just in front of the line of people trying to get into the museum and talk to him about his granddaughter, Susan. You know, harkening all the way back to the very first Doctor. Doctor Who is one of those wonderful ones where it seems to go back and forth. Supernatural is another one where it goes back and forth, where the fans get stuff in front of them. Like, someone make a fan film and actually get the lead actors to do a little something in it for them.
Well, I've seen a few of those.
And that's nice, but what I wanted to mention and get your read on was the potential toxicity of that sort of relationship. Because there's a lot of really bad stuff that it is said, and some of it's probably right. But certainly the showrunner of Doctor Who, Moffat, has gotten a lot of flack. It's not all like, oh, we love what you did with it, and we love the new Doctor, we hate the new Doctor. I mean, some people think he's a terrible person and won't ever stop saying that.
And no matter what kind of...
There's a lot of that.
But I mean, everything I've ever done that even was not related to science fiction and fantasy, I've seen that type of behavior. I just think it's part of human nature. It's sort of like you identify with your tribe.
Well, I think
It's very tribal too, by the way.
Part of the problem also is that he responded, which he shouldn't have done. Like, Moffat and Anne Rice really should get off of social media. These are people who should learn not to reply.
Yeah.
And if you actually are going to reply, if you care enough to reply, then you should listen and maybe see what people are trying to say. And both he and Anne Rice, I'm sure there are plenty of other examples, need to learn that this should not, when you have that much power, showrunner of Doctor Who versus, author of a single book or something. Showrunner of Doctor Who has a really close amount of power. George Lucas is smart, he says nothing. George Lucas keeps his trap shut. He has a ton of power, and he knows there's no point in arguing with the fans, who have none. Moffat, I think, fed it, unfortunately. For all his flaws, he also sort of shut up.
Yeah, but there's not even that sort of personal stuff. There's when when creators say, oh look, we've heard finished critiques and we're going to do something different, and you're like, you have entirely missed the goddamn point. So that's the point as a fan, you can decide whether or not to continue to engage.
Yeah.
Where if you're like trying to explain, trying to guide a child's growth and development, you don't have that liberty. So this is another place where this analogy.
I have met Anne Rice and talked to her briefly, and she expressed to me that she would like to go to a Readercon. I tried to convince the Readercon committee. I tried to email them and says, I got contact information for Anne Rice, and she said she'd like to come to the Readercon. But I don't think they ever got back to her. This was several years, and I do know that she's always been involved with the fans from day one. So she has very
She
definite
likes
opinions.
positive interactions
Yes.
with fans, but when people tore apart a novel for an Amazon review, she wrote a lengthy review that people, as like Neil Gaiman pointed to as an example of, stop me if I ever do something like this.
Yeah, I would know. I understand that the impulse to do that.
It was pulled down by Amazon and then put back up again when an editor said, this is illustrative, people should read this.
Well, I have an opinion on that one. It's like, one of the reasons maybe I haven't put myself out there is because it's such a personal thing to write. And somebody has just said that your baby is a monkey. I mean, this is really, you have to have a incredibly thick skin.
I cherish my 1-star reviews
Yes.
on Goodreads. No, because it shows that it's
you.
not just my friends who are reviewing my book. It makes
Yeah.
me look like these are all, like if there's a range of stars, when friends of mine say, will you review my book, I'll say I'm not giving you 5 stars and here's why. And the ones who are part of the business go, thank you. And the ones who aren't go, what?
Yes, I understand that. It's one of the things that you should develop as a professional. You have to have a very, very tough hide. And I personally know that I don't have that tough hide.
Yes.
You understand what I'm
Oh
talking about?
yeah, I get that. Actually, the weirdest ones are the anthology reviews. It's that I thought this was a book. It's a bunch of short stories.
I'm sorry. That's exactly. They just don't get it. They don't
But
get
I
it.
get that one a lot. But you can't things you choose to
Well, you should consider the source when you see bad reviews. You consider the source. Maybe they woke up on the wrong side of the bed.
Right. I don't know.
Okay, she was.
I want to, before I say the actual thing I want to say, I also wanted to put the comment, wasn't Anne Rice one of the few authors who's expressly spoken out against fanfiction of her work?
I have no idea.
I've heard this, at least as far as
I think she may have sued somebody.
I think at least as far as the Vampire Chronicles, I
She
think she
also doesn't
specifically
want
said
to-
I don't want people writing fanfiction of these characters.
You can't stop people from writing it. What you can do is you can stop people from putting it on. Well, you can try to stop people from putting it on the internet. But I think it was, there's a story that may or may not be true that Gene Roddenberry told George Lucas, just let them write. It means they love you and they're going to buy your stuff.
Exactly. That's it. But when I was working as an editor, we had 5 or 6 different people that when we were thinking about buying it who had different habits. I caught too many Twilight Zone. This was the late 80s, early 90s. Rehashes that were just, the serial numbers weren't even, Marsha the Dummy, come on. They weren't even filed off,
I think fanfic is just it's a basic urge. My mom, when she started grading, because my mom was a teacher for years, and then when she retired, she started grading exams, like the standardized exams, and she got this one, she went, this is a fascinating story about undersea life, with the sponge as the lead character. Here's another one about fascinating story about the lead character. Here's a third one. I'm going to look this up. And all the kids were just naturally writing SpongeBob SquarePants fanfic for the stories they had to write in these standardized test essay sections. It was little kids all writing SpongeBob fanfic. This was like 5 or so years ago when SpongeBob was a big thing.
that's extreme.
It's a natural, it's
Two different things, like it's 2 different skill sets. I think, like I've seen a lot of the more mature fandoms, such as Harry Potter, which is one of my main fandoms, really trying to encourage fan fiction writers to branch off and become original writers. And I think it's great to, if you enjoy writing fan fiction, to aspire to also write original work
But the idea that a fan fiction writer has to become an original author, that you're not complete until you become an original author. Fan fiction is a totally different thing. It's not a stepping stone. It's not a stepping stone to it.
It can be, but it doesn't have to be.
I'm just saying, I know examples.
It's not like
People
a
who
direct
progress
bridge.
on past that. I have seen, you know, it can
But
go
the
one way or
thing is,
another.
progress on past that assumes that it's original
It's
because
just
it's
a different
better than
path.
that. And also,
Okay, I can't use the word progressed.
well,
Okay.
but also, I mean, if you're Neil Gaiman and if you're writing fic about, if you write fic about public domain characters, you can win Hugos. So I mean,
Well, I just think
so
of it.
that's just it's a
Well, I don't.
part of this is cultural.
Before you damn me for this saying progress, I haven't progressed to other than I still do small press because I choose to stay that way. So this is just what
Right,
you
but you-
choose to do.
But you wouldn't say that small presses are inferior.
No, but they
You're
make more
selling.
money in the That's why I'm talking about cash, you know.
I think,
Anyway,
you know, so,
I'm sorry, soft
You wanna
move.
finish up? yeah, just once, I don't know, like, I think if a story is a really obvious fanfic with the serial numbers,
Still alive, you know.
90 or 99% of the time, it's not going to be a really good story. If you're trying to sell it from the original, because like I said, they're different contexts.
Right. Oh, I don't know about that because some of those Twilight Zone knockoffs were pretty damn good and well written, and we did write them a little note about this. Go ahead.
So this is a literary conference. I'm going to use a literary example. So, in Toni Morrison's Beloved, which I'm sure you're familiar with.
Yes.
The daughter becomes sort of a force that drains the mother's life force away, right? The ghost, right? The ghost of the daughter. And so as the daughter grows larger and more powerful, the mother, the originator, becomes smaller and weaker, right? And so for the mother to become strong again and sort of regain her, she has to sort of exercise the ghost. She has to break the tie of this. And I was sitting here thinking about this, and this may be, maybe too far removed from example, but maybe not. The question that I have is, where do fans think they get the sort of standing, to make the sorts of claims on the author, and in doing so sort of drain away whatever it is that the author of the original work had to have. I mean, there's an assumption that, here are these fans, and they can demand this, they can demand that, they can change things, and the author has to sort of comply or die. Or, as you said, just get off social media, shut up, and let them do whatever. So I'm saying, where does that dynamic come from, and why the assumption for this kind of standing?
I mean, I'm entitled to have opinions.
Of course.
So, I mean, I guess I'm not really clear on the distinction here. I mean, that's where it comes from. I'm entitled to have opinions. Nobody has to listen to me.
Well, there's a case, a friend of mine was working on this show, Lee Goldberg was working on the show, gosh, it was an under submarine, Deep Sea Quest, something like that.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Something like that.
Something like that a few years ago, and he took over, and they were taking the show in new directions because it hadn't done particularly well. And they got letters from people saying, well, you'll have to change this because you're not adhering to the fanfic. And the fans really thought that the people in Hollywood should be reading, or small, I'm sure it's just a small category, but they thought that he should have been reading the fanfic.
Most
and
fanfic
then
writers I
working
know
that
don't
in.
want anyone to read theirs.
Yeah.
Don't
That's
want to break
an
the fourth
unusual
wall.
situation.
So, but I mean,
But there's always going to be those crazy fans.
Well,
there's
yeah.
crazy fans of everything. There are crazy
Everything.
baseball fans, there are crazy
Yeah.
sequence
Well,
fans.
yeah.
There's just nothing you can
Or
do
does
about
a crazy baseball fans don't demand that, say, the Yankees play a particular formation?
Well, they might demand
Are you
they hire
sure?
someone back who they got rid of. I mean, they might do that. We don't know what letters the Yankees get.
yeah. I actually think the idea of
And they have
sports-
no power. They're just making demands and they have no power.
Ownership. In fact, because I've been supporting your series from the day one, you just got hired, I own this.
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah, I mean, sports fans use the we, the inclusive we, just
I
as
don't-
much
Yeah.
as science fiction
Yeah.
fans. I don't think there's anything unique to transformative works fandom or to book or TV fandom generally. I think people have opinions and they can be listened to or not, but that's I mean,
right.
and I have to stop. And if a show, or a book series goes, what I see is off the rails and I stop reading it, and that's just all there is.
I'm just wondering, why, the genre, David Foster Wallace didn't get, fans, and he had many fans, but Pressure Home Survivor, either way, you just did Dave Eggers. So I'm just wondering why this is so unique to genre.
Continuing work.
Because you feel marginalized.
Yeah, that too, but I mean.
And it's your tribe that is somebody that might understand you, where you're coming from. I've discussed that with people before. You felt out of place somehow.
Yeah. The
You
ongoing
found a safe
series.
place and now somebody's trying to ruin it.
Ruin it for you.
Yeah.
I understand the psychology behind it, because I fell for that one myself, although on the surface I would look like I was, they used to put I had a badge when I first started, they put a badge on me that said Mary Mundane because I looked too normal. So, for a variety of reasons.
Yeah, I mean, I think you also get a lot more at least in literature, I think you probably get a lot more ongoing stuff in mystery, mystery and science fiction. There was something.
That's what I was going to say, the ongoing series, things that were already owned by multiple people, like comics. You know, it's hard to say that the author has a claim on Marvel Comics.
Well, there are a lot of very successful writers who do not have fan fiction written on their works. They don't seem to attract that, and we could discuss why not.
Well, it takes a world that you want to live in. And a David Foster Wallace novel is not necessarily a world you're going to want to live in, but you want to go to Starfleet. You want to go to Hobbiton. That's a place. I think a lot of it is this sort of. And that's not all of it, but I think one of the reasons why these universes attract people is because it is a universe you want to go to.
Well, I mean, we cannot escape the reality of the marginally attractive two white guys. I'm
laughing. I know what she means. I know what she means.
Is the driving force of most major fandoms is you need two marginally attractive white guys who are in a codependent relationship.
Winchesters.
Yes. That's all. Mostly that's all you need. If they are codependent.
Pair of brothers.
If there's a woman in there, if there's a black guy in there, your fandom will not take off. But another thing that's a barrier is Foster Wallace. Is he Foster Wallace? Anyway, is difficulty of style. Like there ought to be, and difficulty of the world building. Like by my rubric, there ought to be 1 million Aubrey Maturin fanfics, and there was some after the movie came out. Patrick O'Brien, seafaring novels, but the style is very difficult, and the world building, it's 19th century ships. That's really hard. The same thing, like incredibly popular things like Wheel of Time. The canon is daunting, so it's really hard. And the style and reliably informed is harder than you think. So those are some other things that are barriers.
Some of the earliest stuff, though, that has been found so far is Sherlock Holmes fanfic. They actually found in the period written Victorian slack of Holmes and Watson. A friend of mine who's an academic is like, this is gold.
I'm not trying. I'll give you an example of somebody that I don't think, although he was one of my favorite writers. Okay, fanfic. As a matter of fact, I ran this by a writer that writes hard SF. He said, "What would you like to see?" And I said, "I'm a fangirl of John Brunner's writing, and I couldn't imagine having fangirls for that sort of disaster novels." And he said he was actually writing something in that mindset. Of course, he's not going to copy John Brunner's style or anything, but he was actually working on something. And he says, "Funny you should mention that." But John Brunner, but you wouldn't want to live in the Sheep Lookup or stay on Zanzibar, but I adored it when I was a kid.
Yeah, and apocalypse and post-apocalypse is a small but thriving genre of fanfic. It
is. I was just wondering about it because I'm not up on that. I'm just saying that would be, that I wouldn't think it'd be all that.
Is there Katniss Mockingjay fanfic? I would think there would.
Probably.
I mean, Hunger Games. I went looking after the second movie because they really desperately wanted Katniss and the girl with the red hair. I can't remember her name.
But those are more like quest novels.
Well, no, but there is a ton of Hunger Games, but it's mostly about the canon. As far as I can tell, it's about the canon couples and canon love triangles. I was very sad, whatever her name is. Was it Jenna or is that the actress? Anyway, because, yes.
Because reasons.
Yes, because reasons. So the appeal of apocalyptic or post-apocalyptic AU and fanfic is that it's a very juicy setting for
I'm sure The Walking Dead is helpful with that too. It's been so successful.
Yeah, I don't know.
As far as
I've got a couple of attractive white men in there, so hey.
I don't. Yeah, that one doesn't cross my
see, I don't. When I the Hunger Games, I just thought it was popular because there was this plucky teenager that beats the odds, which is to me a quest type of thing, more or less. But with different darker overtones for today's kids. Yeah, they're a little depressed.
I'm not sure I was following.
Why? I'm not blaming them. I'm just saying they are a little more depressed if you talk to kids. It is.
Some of us who grew up on the threat of nuclear annihilation.
Oh, I did. Yeah, I was vaccinated. I did.
I was on the last generation.
I never forget those duck and cover.
Oh no, we knew we were just gonna die.
With the little tummy turtle.
We did not
Duck and cover. And
There's a question. There's a question.
Another question is actually the response to that, which is totally off topic, which is that after September 11th, there was this whole thing, oh, our bubbles have been shattered, our life will never be the same. And I said, I remember in the 60s staring at my nightlight every night, waiting to die. And they said, oh, that doesn't count.
That's pretty classic, yes.
Basically, yes. The people who were in their 20s at September 11th saw the people of my age who had lived through the Cuban Missile Crisis and actually remember it. We're like, no, it's not the same. It's not the same. We were all security. So,
okay.
So
they were secure until that point.
They were secure, yes.
But every generation hopefully has the thing that lets them know.
Well, I was particularly nervous. I was living in Washington, D.C., and I thought we were ground zero.
Probably.
I was in high school at the time. I was scared out of my wits.
I was actually very happy to live near an Air Force base because I knew it would be over fast. No, I mean, that's the conversations we had in the 80s. How fast is it going to be?
Well, I refused to do duck and cover because I turned to the nun and said, look, if they set off an atomic bomb, it won't do any good to put our little coats over our heads. What are you kidding? I was about 9.
Did you have a question?
Yeah.
We'll
allow comments at this stage.
Yeah, we have only 5 minutes. Does anybody want to have any?
I was wondering, a friend of mine speculated that the things that attract more to fanfic than not are things where there's room for fanfic to exist. There's parts missing from the narrative, chunks of the world you don't see, or chunks of the story you don't see, and I was wondering if you guys had any.
I mean, that's definitely a major motivator. I don't think it's the only one, but it's definitely, especially if you're going to do the major AUs. I mean, I think that's why Harry Potter continues to have as much legs as it does. I mean, there's an entire subsection which is Marauders era, which is not my personal jam, but which is super popular. And I don't think that's the only thing.
And also, is the universe big enough to have the elbow room to play in? It doesn't necessarily have to have things you haven't seen, but potential for growth.
Yeah, Tori can totally make up some room if they need to. Sorry, go ahead.
Tori hasn't said much in a while, and I was wondering if she had anything.
She Marriott comments the whole time.
Yes.
She's just been too quiet.
There's one thing that I don't know if y'all heard about, which I think is interesting. Amazon allows writers to basically license their world. So I think James Patterson is one of them. So if you want to write James Patterson fanfic based on whatever his stuff is, you can then publish it on Amazon and get paid for it, but he gets his flies. And he doesn't have to vet it. And there's a few other authors who've done that. I haven't heard anything about it lately. But there is actually a way to make a living making authorized fanfic without being vetted, without anyone saying, no, that wouldn't happen.
That's such a great win-win idea.
Yeah,
that's great. The author's making a profit too on something that's going to happen anyway.
I think the only problem is but for readers don't have to pay for fanfic. There's so much good fanfic out there for free, I don't know if the market.
Well, that's why we, like I said, when we were doing the editing process, especially back then, we were afraid of getting sued if we accidentally didn't catch something like that.
Well, that's why you put, what do you call them?
Disclaimers?
Yes, in your contracts.
Yeah, but you understand what I'm talking about. We didn't want to actually publish it if we wanted to get somebody pissed off, right?
Yeah, no, of course not.
Okay, anybody else? We got about 2 minutes. No.
Tangentially related, I'd like to recommend the YouTube video I Ship It, which is a parody of I don't remember her name, the song about I crashed my car into a bridge, I don't care, except that,
Actually, I saw that at Anime Boston in their video, or they played that video.
Awesome. So they do say things like, you know, I think they're, obviously these two guys belong together, who's gonna watch a buddy movie with straight guy? I mean, I'm not making a rhyme right, but there are, and I think it's funny as a parent.
There's always going to be the village idiot, I just don't know that part. Go ahead.
Since we're doing recommendations, I want to really quickly plug, I don't know if anybody watches Adult Swim, but there's
Sometimes.
There is a TV show that may have a season coming up, or it may be over, but they're still doing it in syndication, called Metalocalypse. It's a fantastic sci-fi subplot buried in a sort of dark slapstick comedy. But one of the reasons I thought of it is when we were talking about toxic entitlement of fans, it does, Metalocalypse canon does a really good illustration of this, because there are two characters. The show is about a metal band. There are two characters who are fans of the band and who begin to think that they have more power than the band members themselves, start demanding things, and it goes wildly out of control. And you know, obviously it's exaggerated, but it addresses that topic.
Flight of the Conchords actually had a super fan, like the only super fan as well, which was Kristen Schaal playing the super soccer fan.
Well, my favorite one of that was the Saturday Night Live parody when Shatner came out. Well, no, was it Shatner?
Yeah, it was Shatner.
Came out and said, "Get a life."
Yeah.
I thought I was going to die laughing.
Boy, did the fans hate that.
I know, but I thought it was very funny. But I'm a very big fan of Star Trek, and I wouldn't go anywhere when it was on because we couldn't record it. I was an adult when it came out, guys. Yes.
Oh, I came to age of the VHS era.
No, but I think we should be good-natured about that.
Yes, don't be a jerk to people. Criticize the works all you want.
Yeah.
Fiercely criticize them.
And if you own the work,
Directly to
have
people,
grace.
be polite.
And if you own the work, have grace about what people are saying.
I'm going to be on how to give compliments later this evening, but I'm scared about that. Because I think no matter what kind of preparation you have for giving a compliment, you're always going to fuck up sometimes. Excuse me. You are. No.
Thanks for coming in, Kelly.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Especially since we're not
Parental Undertones after a while.
any of this 10 minutes in. So it's like, are we going to try something?
That was our living up the dancing.
Yeah, I mean, this is
very much a right. That's very much right. But
I mean, Chesterfield is now a lot more openly acknowledged fanfic writers and fan professionals who publish their talk and work on their next. I just was like, get everybody else in the
You got it.
And it's really important to say that, you know, fanfiction genre is defined as a genre by its trappings, but the process of living is basically universal.
Yeah, I know you did. I just embarrassed you publicly. It's my husband. I can embarrass him in public.